Here we go. Welcome to Sober Mind Rewind, everybody. Here we're going to talk about some of the leftover bits and bytes, some of the things we couldn't get to on Saturday's show. Tonight, we're going to discuss Easter Eve, 1984, when my mother mutilated herself in front of me and my brother and sister.
Joy.
Yeah, it's a good bedtime tale. Hold on, I got sweat on my lip. But first, good evening, my love.
Good evening.
Patrick, good evening, my friend. How are you?
Good evening. I'm doing good. How are you guys?
How are you, babe?
You told me Easter story, and I was thinking it was not going to be about a Cadbury egg or something like that. So
No. It is not. And they answer Judy's question. I feel like a big old pile of poops. I'm getting over the tail end of a cold, I think. I don't know. This thing is lingering. I don't think our bodies know how to handle the germs anymore after the pandemic. I'll get through it. Patrick, we queued up a couple questions, and Judy has one that she wanted to ask you about on Saturday, but I was in the midst of, I think, coming down with a fever, and then we abruptly ended our show because we were at the top of the hour and I was done. Look at me. I look like a strawberry.
Yeah. Yes, I did have a question for you. When you were talking about when you were 5, the story about how your dad, you wanted to play catch with him and he got really upset and put his fist through a wall. I was curious about how, what kind of influence your parents had prior to your sobriety and now during your sobriety. What kind of influence they had on you?
Prior, I'll try to keep it concise here, but, went off to college, and then, I went to college for, I think it was like 8 or 9 years. Most people call them doctors.
I was going to say, are you a doctor?
They went for the extended, on and off again trip. And, I think I stayed with my dad briefly when I moved back into town, and that lasted all about 2 months.
So are your parents no longer together?
They separated when I was 10.
Okay.
So, but it's been very cordial since, I guess the major holidays sort of thing.
Got it.
But going through sobriety, they weren't really part of the equation. I had a lot of personal growing to do, but they were indirectly part of my sobriety for a couple of reasons. My dad, mainly, my mom was very loving, but my dad, when we talk about these shadow selves or the imposter or the critic, a lot of people, and myself included, we craft these personalities from us learning the rules of society, right? You should be doing this. You have to do this way. And the first people to teach us about some of those is our parents, right? So in my mind, they often take the tones of my parents, and most namely my dad. So, part of my coaching, I went through some release writing, and that is just essentially, I held a lot of anger, so I had to write a big FU letter to be like, I hated that, I was never good enough or had to earn something, I always had to earn love in my mind. And through that writing, I realized, and this, I'm trying to get to the part why he played an important part of my sobriety, is through that, I realized, we talked about our gifts and our curses, and they're neither and both at the same time. The traits that I have, what I mean by neither and both means it's the way I hold them. Like I said, being dogged after something can be very empowering that you're persistent, but at the same time, it can also anchor you to a failing cause or something like that.
Yeah.
And my point with that is, I had to learn that my dad loves me and he did the best he could. And I had to learn that he is fallible himself and that he is just not capable of unconditional love.
Yeah. They work with the tools they have.
They work with the tools they have, and you have to learn that they're just a person, and whether or not they're a person you want, I was raising my kids and something weird happened, like came from like dormancy of these like 20 and 30 years of everything that I freaking hated about dealing with my dad. All of it just came spilling out of my mouth. Like it was just laid dormant, and I hated that. And I had nightmares very similar to Luke Skywalker, right, in Empire Strikes Back, where he like goes into the tree or whatever, the cave, and he fights Vader and he chops his head off, and
there's
lo
his
and
face.
behold,
Yeah.
there's his face.
Yep.
So I struggled with that. And so I had to learn to forgive a lot, because like I said, they were neither good nor bad. They were just the tools my dad had to deal with stuff.
Yeah.
And that was part of my journey with that. So I had to release a lot of that and just let go, so I could move on. Forgiveness is, AA loves to call forgiveness letting go of all hope for a better past.
Yes.
So that's how they played a role in my sobriety.
Okay, cool.
Man, that is so interesting, Patrick. Do you think, so not to put you on the spot, but you and I have a pretty candid relationship. Do you think as we continue to go through this sober mind adventure, you'd ever want to talk more about the coaching that you went through?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. It'll come up in our conversation here, but whenever you want to put a light on it, I'm here for that.
All right, sounds good.
That sounds like an episode.
Yeah. An extended version.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Somebody had a question between Saturday and now about me talking about my mom, and all the stuff that we went through in Oregon, and now she's back in California and we're out here in Missouri, and they wanted to know what her journey was, or what her journey ended up being. Well, she ended up actually going through Al-Anon and going through the program. I don't think she did AA, but I do know she did Al-Anon. And she's not, she still partakes, but I don't think it's on a regular basis. She has a glass of wine every once in a while.
What about the devil's lettuce?
I don't think she, I know she partakes every once in a while, but I don't think she actually goes to the dispensary and purchases it.
Yeah.
I think she's pretty much trying to live her sober life, I guess, however she wants to live it. But
yeah, I think she grew out of that stuff a long time ago.
yeah, she's done her work. I think she's still doing her work, but yeah.
Did she play any part of your sobriety?
I don't think so. I don't think, okay, so she did come up after I got sober, because a lot of the stuff that happened in my childhood manifested when I was clear-headed. But I don't think she had anything to do with me wanting to get sober. I think it was more just John and I deciding that it was time for us to take that step. But yeah, of course, once you get sober, a lot of stuff comes back up into your life, and now all of a sudden you have to deal with it with a clear head, and that's how it happened. But as far as wanting to get sober, no, she didn't.
That's interesting, Patrick. I just started thinking about that. You know what I realized is we didn't, I don't know if we didn't have a good track record. It's not that, because we never said we were gonna quit, but I feel like we had a very limited support system. I can't blame people. I think for the amount that we consumed and we just up and quit, I bet they're like, yeah, right, these fools will be
They'll be drinking in a week. Yeah.
Helping Anheuser-Busch back out shortly here.
Yeah. Although I do have to say that my sister and brother-in-law, who have been sober for years, were definitely happy about our sobriety and here to help if we needed it.
Yeah, they were highly encouraging.
But when you do sober up, you lose a lot of good friends too, because they were that environment. They were your drinking buddies or whatever. You tend to lose, a good portion of your environment. But then you turn around and you make different friends and new friends. So
I had a thought about that today. A big portion in the early sobriety and even ongoing is, learning to love yourself, but comes with that setting boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And, with parents, like I said, I love my dad, but I also had to learn to set hard boundaries for our interaction so I could, at least maintain a healthy relationship. And, there was some grieving in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a loss, but like you said, with other friends, those boundaries were important, but it also led to a loss of the relationship too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, Patrick, do you have? We got super excited because we figured out how to launch the chat in Streamlabs, and then I didn't sign in yet, and I'm two-factor enforced. Everyone should be two-factor enforced. We're not endorsed or sponsored by YubiKey, but you should have a token. In today's day and age, am I right, Patrick? Do you have access to the chat? Are you logged in somewhere? If not, I can log in.
I am logged in.
Is anyone asking anything?
We got no questions so far.
Okay. All right. Well,
bring it on.
Okay.
Let's do this.
We ready for this? Let me give
a time
disclosure.
Yes. Seriously, this is very graphic. It's pretty explicit, but there's no real way to not talk about it. And so brace yourselves. Here goes. This, if you're new joining this episode, as a reminder, it's Sober Mind. That's the name we came up with because we talk about sobriety and mindfulness. So we like to focus on sobriety and then a lot of our own psychology and dealing with our own mental health. So this episode, not this show right now, but this episode in my life, I firmly believe had a significant traumatic imprint on my overall development.
I think it would have a traumatic imprint on anybody.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yes. Okay, so here goes. It was Easter Eve, 1984, Sacramento, California. I know it was 1984, or it could have been 83, but I don't think so. Because, it was playing relentlessly on the radio.
Van Halen.
Yeah.
1984.
Jump, all the time. We get it, David Lee Roth. We totally get it. So the album was named 1984. So it was, my mom at that time was heavy into all kinds of uppers and downers and tons of booze. I remember her drinking, the big gallon jugs of wine, the glass ones.
Galileo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gallo or something like
Gallo,
that.
Yeah.
She would just keep them in the garage.
Galileo.
She would power chug those things, but had to be around, it was dark on Easter, so I don't know, what is that, 7, 8 o'clock at night? We were, I was in my bedroom, Brandy and Hans, that's my half brother and half sister, they were in their rooms. And Easter was always something really special to me, especially when we lived in Switzerland, because we would wake up in the morning, we just have huge baskets of chocolate and real chocolate, Swiss chocolate,
Yum.
So it was something that was very nostalgic to me. And I think at this time, so 84, I was 12 years old. And I obviously knew at 12 there was no Easter bunny, but I was still wanting my basket in the morning, and I was concerned that Brandy and Hans wouldn't be getting anything either because my mom was hammered. And she was in the bedroom. I think there was 2 or 3 guys that showed up during the course of the late afternoon. And I'll never forget, she was just all sweaty and her hair was greasy. They were having sex and doing coke, in case no one figured that out by now. Yeah. And other drugs and drinking heavily. So I caught her in between, I guess, break time or whatever they did at that time. And I was like, hey there, role model. Any chance? I said it much differently, but I was like, what's going on with the Easter baskets? And she just got super, super pissed. Brandy and Hans were standing out there at that time for some reason, and she just started screaming her normal affectionate battle cry of, what the fuck do you want from me? I wish you were never born. What's wrong with you? Why can't you just leave me alone? And she picked up a butcher knife in the kitchen and in rapid succession slit both of her wrists. Just like zing, zing, and there was blood just starting to drip all over the place, and she just started screaming, I wish you were never fucking born. I can't stand all of you. Look what you made me do.
Oh, that's not a guilt trip.
Yeah, and so Brandy and Hans were just screaming and crying. Brandy was she was hysterical about the whole situation, and I did not know how to respond. It was like I was in a dream state all of a sudden. Blood all over the kitchen floor. She scampers off to her bedroom down the hall. And I think we started cleaning up some of the blood. I don't know. A lot of these details, I think my brain was like, delete. We don't need to remember that.
Well, I mean, it's being so shocking. I'm sure that parts of your brain just shut off a lot of stuff because it was just too much to absorb at 12 years old.
Yeah, so here's what happened next. All 3 of us went into my bedroom and we just sat on the bedroom floor, not talking. The feeling I had then was, it was like, I knew my mom was a bad parent. I was like, but this cuts the cake.
This is the topper.
This is it. She's officially a horrible parent. I joke, but I was like, right then I was like, man, I felt mentally crippled, emotionally stifled. I didn't know how to take care of Brandy and Hans. I always did the best I could.
Is this where some of the abandonment issues came out?
Oh, I'm sure. That whole 2-3 year stretch in Sacramento was absolutely horrific. That was shortly after she left Brandy and Hans's dad, whom we moved back from Switzerland. We had a stable life, but anyway, we can get into the whole mommy dearest situation later on. Anyway, what happened next was she came out of her bedroom, kicked our bedroom door open, and she had big white bandages, like, gauze wrapped around her wrists that were like the blood was kind of starting to seep through. I learned later on in life that I think so she didn't do it right. She just kind of whack with the
butcher knife.
The butcher knives, and it probably hit a lot of bone and stuff, but it looked super dramatic. We never talked about it. To this day, I don't know if it was just a bizarre drug-induced flip out or what. But here's the clincher. She picked Hans up by his hair and starts yelling obscenities, and she's like, you guys want something? You want something to eat? Fuck you. Grabs Hans, grabs Brandy by her hand. Luckily, her hands were full. I could stand on my own. So I'm following them down the hallway, and on the table there was a wooden cutting board with a boiled cow tongue on it. Just a whole cow tongue, like just boiled fresh out of the water. I don't know if you guys have ever seen one of those, but it's like,
yeah,
there's some prep work you have to do to cow tongue to get it ready, not just boil it like that. And so it had all the weird hair things all over it and everything. And she said, in various fashion, I don't remember all the details, but it was basically, you guys are not leaving until you eat this meal. I'm like, all right, far cry from the Easter baskets I was looking for, but anyway, here we are. So the rest of it is just all, there's like one snapshot of a picture, and then like life happened after that, if that makes any sense at all. That's the only way I can describe.
Before you went, it all went to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah, she left. She was partying it up. It was late at night by that time. It was like 10 o'clock. And going back to how I started this, Patrick and Judi, that moment when I can't remember any more of the details after that, but that's when something happened.
Mm-hmm.
And like there was a physical, I don't know, I'm no doctor, but there was a physical alteration with my brain makeup at that time.
Oh, I don't doubt that. I mean, because you're 12, you're in those formidable years, and for something like that to happen,
yeah,
I can't even imagine.
We were sitting at the table, and I was just like, I wasn't crying, I wasn't freaking out, I was just kind of stone face. And I remember Hans remembers this too. Brandy's like, I ain't fucking eating that tongue. She left. And then I can't remember what happened next, but it was Patrick. I think on one of our runs, you and I were talking about anxiety. I can't remember. Anyway, I realized a while ago, as I've been doing my own healing and reflecting, and Judi and I have been trying to figure all this stuff out, that I've been an anxious individual all of my life. But I think that was the trigger. That was sort of the linchpin of what happened, because I was never fully correct after that. And then it was then I started having behavioral issues, and then Mom would always be freaking, she'd go to parent-teacher conferences once in a while. I don't know why.
I was going to say, really? She went?
A couple occasions.
Wow.
But I always remember just the look of disdain and shame on her face. And it really confused me. I got no wisecracks for that. I know now, looking back, I'm like, I was getting no development from you.
No.
And now you're sitting here shocked that my teachers are like, your child has an attention span issue and he doesn't behave well in class. And she's blaming me like, you son of a bitch. Yeah.
Good grief. Mother of the year.
Yeah.
I words fail me right now, John. If I was there, I'd just come over and give you a hug. That's not fair to anyone, let alone a 12-year-old. You were looking out for your half siblings. You were, not only showing care for others, but vulnerability in yourself. And you immediately were met with visceral and spite and some of the worst things about people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you did what any person would do, is survive. And to me, it sounds like you learned the lock, the lock being, this is it. My mom showed me that I can't be vulnerable or be whatever. So I'm taking whatever fucking I have left, I'm locking that away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting it out of her reach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm using words right now, but right now I just wish I could reach out to the screen and just give you a hug.
I appreciate it, Patrick.
I've heard that story before, and it's still, every time I hear it, it still is just stunningly depressive and shocking. And yeah, it's something nobody should have to go through. And the fact that you actually came through it and you are the good person that you are today. I mean,
I appreciate it. Thank you, Kim. So yeah, I thank you for the empathy. I really appreciate it. Sometimes I want to say that it doesn't matter. It didn't affect me, but you know, the more that we go through our mental health journey, I do think a lot of those. I think back on things that happened in our lives, things that you and I have done, where our brains are very malleable. We leave pretty deep imprints when things happen, whether it be good or bad. Mm-hmm. It's what shapes us. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you were talking about closing that up and holding it away and walling it up. It's very similar to you know, a lot of things that were, as far as I see them, you get to a point to where you feel like you have lost respect for whoever that is, and for two, you feel like you cannot trust them whatsoever anymore. You have no faith, no trust, no anything in them anymore, and you realize that you're by yourself at that point, and you gotta take care of yourself or your siblings.
Yeah.
I just have a few questions around this so I can better understand, and I want to first just honor your vulnerability right now, because it is just so intense, and you know, we don't often get to do that. And so I ask these questions just to understand and sympathize, and if they are ever uncomfortable, will you please let me know?
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
Just know that I got you. So preface to your story, you talked about a lot of nostalgia, a lot of kid stuff, you know, like Easter was, you know, we had the baskets and, you know, looking out for the kids and just reminisce it. Do you and the way you tell it, the way you change physically, do you feel like this is where John finally had to was forced to grow up, and you know, your child self, where you literally had to say bye? Anything that was left, you talked about it of being your mom, you know, and being that switch to be like, you know, yeah, role model of the year, but this is it. This is beyond the pale. This is done, right?
I don't know, Patrick. I don't think so. I'm sure it had a good boost. It gave me sort of an index for it, if you will. But it was that same year, towards the end of summer, she kicked me out of the house because my bedroom was in disarray, like a 12-year-old boy's bedroom would be. Literally kicked me out of the house. Told me to leave and never come back. That's when my childhood said see ya. Because I found myself walking around in downtown Sacramento.
Oh, which is such a nice place to walk around.
I was just petrified. I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do. I did go to McDonald's, and they were giving out samples of chicken nuggets, and I went back like 3 or 4 times. That's how I ate dinner. Somehow I figured out how to get over to Hans and Brandy's dad's place, and he was not there. I waited on the porch of the apartment area for like 5 or 6 hours. I was crying. I was freaking out. I didn't know what to do. That's when it all changed. Fast forward, I ended up, he wouldn't, when he finally showed up, he asked basically what I was doing there. He wasn't rude to me, but I was like, he was the only father figure I really knew. There's a whole nother abandonment issue. Thank you, Brian. There's a whole nother abandonment issue because when we moved to Switzerland with him, I was super young. I learned how to speak Swiss German. That was my primary language. And then he was my father. I called him Pater, father, in Swiss German. And then when we got back to the States, he left. He would come pick up Brandy and Hans on the weekends for the visitation, and I would beg to go with him. He would never let me go. He would just leave me. And then when I went to, when I found his apartment, when he showed up, I asked, I was in a high. I was so, oh my God, I was so relieved that he showed up. And I told him what happened. I asked if I could live with him. And Next thing you know, he dropped me off. Had to be like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Jeez.
Back
How did that make you feel?
Oh,
Devastated.
Because number one, I was freaking out. Like, he waited in the car and waved at my mother, and my mother looked at me like in pure disgust and asked where the hell I had been this whole time.
Oh, jeez.
And then told me to get in my room and clean it. So that night, Patrick, to answer your question, that's when my child left.
That's when you grew up.
Kind of. It was a mess still after that. There was a lot. I'm sitting here talking about it, getting pretty emotional because, man,
that's a lot.
The relationship with my mother it's weird because I was 12 years old, and then from 12 to 16 at that time, it seems like a long time, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Now that we're older, 4 years is kind of nothing, but it seems like I did a lot of growing up then.
Did a lot of fast growing up.
Yeah, I was going to say you didn't have much of a choice.
Yeah. Her raising us, hold on. Her attempt at raising us and then moving all over Northern California was a shit show. I developed social anxiety then. I didn't know it at the time, but I know we all had awkward years in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and then especially going to high school, but I was a genetic fucking nuclear bomb. I was super, super confused. I think puberty affected me a little bit differently because I didn't have any, there was no one to teach me how to be a man.
Yeah.
How to act. That's a rough time.
Especially without a role model.
Yeah.
I don't even think, you have to say, man, in a lot of instances, just human.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. Easter Eve.
A tough story. I was just sitting with that as just all sorts of confusing. But from that, I see John the survivor. I'm super thankful. You carried so much, man. You don't own that shit anymore.
I don't.
You survived, and
yeah. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, babe. Anyway, I still like Easter. I really do. Oh, babe.
I will never serve you a beef tongue. I swear. No, I promise.
I will never eat. All right, so that's the scoop. I'm glad I got that off my chest. Threw it out there. So
thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Let's do a little shift here. I had a question for both you and Patrick. What do you do now in your sobriety that brings you joy and happiness?
That's a good one. Go ahead, Patrick, if you're ready.
All the things. Meaning, before when I talked about my rock bottom not being one event, and it was more like all the stuff in my life, the taste turned to ash.
Mm-hmm.
Now I get to experience all the flavors. Even the salty stuff is like kind of fun. And what I mean by that is like, there was a period in sobriety where you get really bored with stuff. Your brain's rewiring itself. You fucked it up for so long that the dopamine hits aren't there and everything just gets blah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But after a while, when it starts to heal, you get to kind of fall back in love with like your passions in a new way. And that was really kind of fun. So I love electronics. I love programming. I love fiddling around with stuff. I love being a dad. I love being a husband. I'm finding new ways. Instead of like, first I know that I will always struggle to find my truth. Telling me that I struggle is like saying water's wet. But now I get to, like do that and enjoy, I enjoy the ride. I just enjoy the ride.
Awesome.
Yeah, mine's sort of the same. It took me a few months I wasn't trying to sort of figure out a path, but it just started to happen. Sometimes, I've told you this, sometimes I catch myself either on a run or walking back or just sitting, and I'm like, man, I'm happy. I feel good. I feel good about myself. I feel my brain has healed. I approach things a lot differently. Mm-hmm. You know, built this whole studio without intending to do it / office. Just set out to, I don't know, I have such a zest for absorbing knowledge and technology. One of the biggest things that I came across was there's a guy that I came across on YouTube that talks about stoicism, and there's some good philosophies with that stuff, but I took what I wanted from it and then left the other. And that's when I got my tattoo of amor fati, which means love fate. And it was probably a year ago when I started catching myself responding differently to situations. And a good example is whatever it is in my life, if something starts to break down, like let's say our water heater was about to, our water heater was going out. Mm-hmm. My old emotional response to that was sheer panic because I wouldn't understand how to get a new hot water heater. Now it's like, well, we can buy a hot water heater. And I've experienced, so I digress about loving fate, but that sort of falls in line with it. What I catch myself doing when there's a problem or something breaks or there's a challenge in life, I know I've told you before, I will always say the cliche things, but sometimes with challenges comes good opportunities. Mm-hmm. And if we just attack whatever is happening at the time that is a problem or a challenge and just figure it out like it's something fun to do. Like, all right, I was bored anyway. Now I've got a challenge in front of me.
Mm-hmm. The work will always be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I carry around a very similar quote about fate, and I love yours. Mine was, you cannot alter your fate, but you can rise to meet it.
Mm.
Oh, nice. That's a good one.
So very, very similar vein there, and like you said, John, the work is there. That's why Zen appeals to me about finding finding enlightenment through everyday tasks,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of aspect, very similar. Stuff's going to break, stuff's going to fail, stuff's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just got to learn to ride the wave.
Yeah.
So, it's not what happens, it's how you react to it.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So I guess to answer your question, I enjoy being able to enjoy myself. Mm-hmm. And with that just comes a bunch of fruitful things.
Yeah.
It's the consciousness that I didn't realize I was really missing.
Mm-hmm. The awareness.
Yeah.
Awesome. Could you... Thank you.
Go ahead. These are good questions. Patrick, do you have any questions? Anything you want to talk about? We got a couple more.
Yeah, we can get to it. We'll try to do a couple more. Judi, I know at one point you were talking about anxiety and, some of your history with it and how it's kind of embedded in with your sobriety and your journey.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to that a little bit more?
I started dealing with anxiety. Well, I started dealing with it before I knew it was anxiety. I just thought it was just something that, everybody went through. That feeling of wanting to crawl underneath your bed or crawl in your closet or whatever. I just thought it was, but it started getting, I'd say it started to get really bad shortly before you and I got sober. I would have spikes that would happen and it would just be out of the norm. And one thought would come in my head and then it would just snowball. And it's not, they're unrealistic thoughts that come into my head that I can't control. And they just blow up, and it gets to the point to where I can't get any hold on them. It's the thoughts of, the world's going to blow up and everything is going to go chaotic and, and fill in the blanks. So I started experiencing these shortly before we decided to get sober, that I recognized that it was anxiety that I was experiencing. And then we got sober, and obviously they got worse because I wasn't muting them with pot or with alcohol. So I had to learn to deal with them being stone cold sober. So I had a lot of inner dialogue. I went and saw a therapist for it. A lot of meditation. It was just, anxiety is really scary when it hits you and you have no control and all you see behind your eye is chaos and havoc and blood, and there's no pulling yourself out of it. And there was times I literally wanted to crawl into my closet and hide from everything that happened. So yeah, it was not fun. And I've had a few episodes since I've been sober, but I have tools now. I have ways to deal with it. One of the things that my therapist told me, because I was talking about all these visions that would happen in my head, and they would just pop up out of nowhere. And she told me that because I kept trying to figure out, why are these happening? Why is this happening to me? Why am I thinking these things? It's not something I've invited into my head. There it was. And she said, you can never rationalize an irrational thought. And that was like somebody had turned on a light bulb above my head. And it actually relieved about 20 pounds off my shoulders. I was like, oh, it's an irrational thought. Okay, so I can just forget it. So it's not that easy to forget, but it helps me. It gives me a tool to, when those start to happen, to sit back and stop and take a breath and shrink my focus, and realize that it's not rational thoughts that are in my head. And there's no way I can rationalize any of them. And that has been able to help. I have had to take a lorazepam every once in a while because it gets out of control. But that's rarely now that I have the tools to deal with the anxiety that I have. But yeah, it was scary for a while, when I couldn't control any of the thoughts in my head, and I'd panic, but it wasn't a panic attack because it was just anxiety. But yeah, that's how I deal with it now.
I'm super proud of you. That's a hard one for sure. I've had a couple panic attacks myself, but for me, the invasive thought, stems around a lot of anger, and it sucks because that when it steps into that space, it's just so big. And it feels like for anxiety, the only tool that you have to fight it is more anxiety. And all that does is just feed the beast, and it's, Bill Hader has an awesome interview on one of the nighttime talk shows. And he talks about how he had it. And the way he frames it was like, speaking to the observer and raising self-awareness. But he said, it's my little monkey. So he said it sits on my shoulder, and you have to learn to just like, when it shows up, you have to be like, oh, hi there, and like learn to just sit with it. Because if you start, like you said, trying to rationalize an irrational thought, it just
it's kind of, you have to sit down and go, okay, what is going on in my life that is causing these thoughts to pop into my head? What's the trigger? What's happening? Am I stressing too much? Am I not paying attention to what's going on? Am I overthinking things? Am I, expanding my vision so it's this big when it should be this big? So yeah, I sit back and try and talk yourself out of it and say, okay, let's just calm down and take a breath. Let's just breathe for a minute.
One of the other interesting phenomena about the way we are now is that when I was talking to my therapist, and then our chiropractor has got this thing that goes across the screen where it talks about the information inundation we have. It's happened so fast with all of this stuff that our brains try to process and absorb. We don't get it. These damn phones that are tied to us. Emily was talking. I was talking to her about this. She was, I think she was talking to Sarah, and she was concerned about all the shit that's going on in the world and all the drag queen weird banning and stuff that's going on, and the transgender hate, which is archaic and caveman behavior. But
yeah, antiquated.
I always try to remind people that believe it or not, statistically right now, especially the United States, we're in one of the least violent periods that we've been in many decades.
We just didn't have that instant right in front of us.
Right. If something happened, I'll just use an example. So if something happened in Arizona in 1942, and it was a bad situation, by the time it got to a major newspaper, the New York Times or the San Francisco Chronicle or whatever, it was old news and it wasn't going to get published. Now it is, people can stream it in real time as it's happening. Mm-hmm. We got shit coming at us from all over the place. We can subscribe to anything. This causes, we're not equipped to be able to handle this stuff so quickly.
Over inundation.
Right. So, we're predicting machines. We want to know the future, right? That we're stimulus and response creatures.
Very much so,
right?
yeah.
Stimulus, response, and then you have Q, stimulus, response, reward, right? Is the behavior structure that we are literally wired for our survival, and we see this. And so this is why we have confirmation bias. Oh, if I do X, I'm looking for that response and reward immediately to confirm, oh, hey, this is something good for you. You need to survive. But fling us forward where we're consuming literally thousands of times worth of data compared to what our evolutionary brains were designed for. It's supposed to be like, is this good to eat? Stimulus response. Oh, this is not good to eat.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about complex thoughts and other items, and we're just gonna, and this is that self-fulfilling prophecy thing too, because we are wired for that response and knowable. We are gonna go, well, I know this, so I'm gonna innately go seeking for it. And when you step out into the information realm, it's literally all at your fingertips, right? The amount of information that you can bring into yourself is so insane. It's almost unhealthy in some regards if you hold it wrongly, but like you said, John, too, it's just so overpowering that it like hitting alcohol or meth or cocaine, the dopamine just flooding all your receptors. It's that information. Oh, this is what I need to see. This is what I need to confirm. The world's going to hell in a handbasket, and I can find 10 articles right now that just populated that can confirm that.
Yeah. I had trouble watching the news sometimes because it would just, it would throw me right into an anxiety attack just sitting there watching the news and not even getting on the internet or anywhere.
They call it doom scrolling.
Yeah.
The younger kid, the youngins, doom scrolling.
And
yeah, it's hard to, we have very addictive patterning based on that stimulus response structuring. And it's hard sometimes. I get it.
Yeah. It's really good. It's really good to unplug every once in a while. Go meditate, go do yoga, go for a walk and leave your phone at home.
Simplicity eludes us.
Yeah. Just unplug just for a minute.
It's just, Scott, anxiety is a difficult thing to find your way out of when you're deep in it. Yes.
Yeah, very much so.
Rationalize, and the worst thing, an ADD mind is always the state of wanting to be elsewhere, and it preoccupies very quickly. And as you're just having so much come in that you just want to be elsewhere, right? And anxiety goes hand in hand with that. It is a very good trigger, and it just, the one thing, if somebody's having a panic attack or if you're in it, one of the best things you can do is just return to breath, return to body. But it is like one of the absolute hardest things to execute because your brain is firing in such a way that it doesn't have those tools readily available. Like it's literally shutting itself off from that because it's trying to go into defensive mode.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very difficult to control. We talked about that before. People are always like, John, why don't you just calm down? Forget about it.
Yeah.
Let it relax, bro.
Just let it go.
Let it slide off your back. I'm like, bitch, believe me, I wish.
You don't understand. you can't do it.
Yeah. Yep. Kim says we're overwhelmed with information every day. Learning and implementing ways to unplug are so beneficial.
Yeah.
So I like this conversation. The disturbing thing about the phones, I've talked about this before. I feel like that I'm not that weird old man that's like, back in my day, we didn't have these things, but I do get concerned. I've told you this 100 times. I'll be out running, especially when it's closer to summer. And I'm running right around the time when all the middle school and high school kids are getting ready to get on the bus. And I swear it's like a British comedy. They're just all like 5, 6, 7th graders, just standing in a line, heads down, one hand on their phone, one hand in their pocket. I just want to run up to them and go, number one, I could have just kidnapped one of your buddies. You'd have no idea. You got to look around.
I'm glad that's the first place you went.
I know. Just have some social awareness. What's going on? And
I can't.
But I just
can't
want to
blame them though.
I know, Patrick, but
yeah.
I know I'm gonna get some hate here, but it's a parenting issue as well. Or no, you don't think so, Patrick?
Well, part and parcel with it. I'm guilty of those too. The access compared to my habits with it, I struggle with that too, and it's just so immediately available, and it's so prevalent that it's so intertwined. Because in its best cases, it is a wonderful tool. We have a supercomputer in our pocket. We're on the technology right now, sharing this, space, and that's amazing. And the amount that you can get after and learn on your own is great too. But the amount of bad habits that can bring you your device, or the games, the immediacy, the shutting down, I believe this is causing undue stress on a younger generation that we're not familiar with. Like that is how they're learning to grow up, very much like where you learn to protect yourself at a very young age. They often learn that, sometimes interacting with people is messy. My phone gives me a noble future. I can't blame them for that if we're not giving them the tools to reach beyond that. And it sucks and it's frustrating because you also want to be like one of the conspiracy theorists and run up to him and shake him and be like, wake up, sheeple, just let it go, but you have to reflect on your own.
You guys ever just talk to each other, not the phone?
Right. You have to reflect on your own attachment to technology. And like we do with our own sobriety, when we're in it, we're not going to be able to see it. And the best we could do is just try and hold space and interact with people the best we can. There's going to be people that we can't save. And that sucks for some of us that, want to be the rescuer, right? What we identify with. I'm here to save you, wake up, sheeple. You are now liberated from your phone. What would they do if you came up yelling that? They'd be like, what the fuck? Why don't you go sit on the porch and say, get off my lawn, old man. Yeah, right. They're going to be like,
well, I know it's injecting anxiety and weird behavioral patterns, and we're talking about information coming at us. They're sitting there looking at whatever, not seeing the hawk that's up on the
phone lines. Yeah.
Are they phone lines anymore?
No, probably a roof.
Come on, John. I have the knowledge of the world at my entire fingertips, and I just want to look at cat memes.
That's right.
I just want trying to get through the day, man.
The tickety tax.
The tickety, yeah.
The tickety tax.
All right, let's do one more question. We're getting this is a half-hour show, but we got no We got nowhere to go anyway, but I think we should wrap it up shortly here if you guys are good with that. I know Patrick's got some commitments.
This is a half an hour show that's been an hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's good discussion.
Yeah.
It's perfect for a bunch of ADD people.
Yep.
So,
Babe, do you want to ask this question?
Oh, okay. So this is actually to both you and Patrick. Have you had any struggles with wanting to take a drink of alcohol since you've been sober?
you want to go?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. I
Go.
have a cold. I was just staring at you like, was dead or Patrick?
I'm ruminating right now. So
I'll go. Do you want me to go?
yes.
Okay. I have not. I did that one time. Sorry, the judge would be like, is it yes or no? I did not, but I did that one time. Not in the sense that I want to drink. I had that weird ritual thing where I was building the shed and I was hot and I came in and I was like, I could really go for a beer, but it turns out I was just thirsty. So I drank the seltzer water and felt satiated. I haven't had a craving since then. I do not.
What about the wine commercials?
Okay. That one time. But I think you're asking it in a sense of, yeah, we saw that commercial during the Super Bowl and the guy was like drinking that white wine. I was like, ooh, that'd be good. Some white wine and some peanuts. And I looked at you, but we knew it. We weren't going to.
Yeah, we knew we weren't going to,
Well, because we immediately said, well, yeah, 3 boxes later and a wild hangover.
Never stops at one.
But the thing you went through that you talked about last weekend, that scared me. When you said we did have a shitty week. I had a heck of a week up in at work. Scott, you know what was going down up there. It was a rough time. Plus, I was dealing with some other side stuff, very corporate, challenging issues. But I was going through my stuff. The last thing I ever want to do when I get stressed out is drink. But when, excuse me, when you said that, you walked by in Dad's room and there was a bottle of wine that Dad, you got to throw that shit away. It's like 4 years old down there at room temperature. By the way, I know he's watching.
A little musty.
Yeah.
Just a little. It's now vinegar.
It is not cellar temperature where he keeps that.
No.
But, and you said, my sobriety was really tested today. And I just thought about grabbing that bottle of wine and then what would I do?
Yeah.
I haven't had one of those, luckily. I'm confident to say that there's just no, it's so far out of my realm of possibility that my life would be a complete fucking shambles for one drink. It would just be, I think I have I think if I were to ingest something that were to have any kind of psychoactive effect on me, I'm sure I'd have a full-blown panic attack.
Yeah, I could see that.
Or maybe if I don't, maybe if I've always told myself that, then I can't stand to lose. I cannot stand the thought of not having this controlled consciousness.
Mm-hmm. This level of sobriety.
I do not want to be detached from this reality ever again. That's how I feel right now. That's how I feel every day when I wake up.
Awesome.
Now I just want to give you a hug for another reason. Proud of you, man.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, you're up, Patrick.
So the first 90 days, we talk about those itches and rituals, and I want to give honor to the fact that those first 90 days, I'm sorry, but all my heart goes out to those warriors putting down the drink for the first time and for the 1000th first time, because that first stretch is so hard. Your brain is wired to make you fail at a certain point because it's so dependent upon that, and it's not just chemical, it like literally shuts down other areas of your brain that you can think rationally and do so. So all the cards are stacked against you, it feels like. And there's a lot of work that you have to do in the early days of extrapolating how you really feel versus a need to drink. So a lot of those existed in the first days, but you're right. After that, I learned that I am very impulsive and think emotionally at first, and that is often my first foot forward is very emotional. And so I can get powerful swells that come up where I feel like I need one. But that also taught me my first strength is, nostalgia itself is a hell of a drug. It is the highlight reel of your memories, right? And there's nothing more powerful tied to like taste and smell. So when it comes in and it feels it, and it's like you feel like you're compelled for that drink. I have to realize that it's just playing that fucking highlight reel of being like, it's that Bud Light commercial, everybody like toasting and cheering, and it's like, yeah, let's show the real one where the dude's throwing up in the corner and like the couple's getting in the fight and the person's like so confused that they don't know where they're at. Let's show that, let's show that reel, because that's what I have to do in my head. I'm like, you are reacting emotionally to this, you're playing your highlight reel. Play the other tape forward to see where it lands. And like you, John, it's like, I am so thankful for where I'm at, and to take that away, I would be more upset now than wanting to toss it. So it becomes like I have to embrace that. Like, what were you really emotional about? Like, what was it about that? I have to be honest. Sometimes, like in my past, since I didn't have the coping mechanisms on that nice summer day, you finish that task, you're sweaty, the sun's setting, and have that beer. And we talked about the refreshing part, but then you also have to learn like, hey, that was one of the rare times that you were able to mute a lot of the chatter, and you were able to say like, oh yeah, job well done, like end of the day, like pat on the back, nobody else was there. And so you have to say, oh, it wasn't the beer that did that. It wasn't that 9% super eclectic IPA that you went out hunting for to give you like your sense of uniqueness. This is my personality. This is me. This is the end of the day. I deserve this. You know what? You fucking busted your ass, and I'm proud of you. How about that? Go enjoy that LaCroix.
Yeah.
But you have to learn to like, so what I'm trying to say is like, they're not bad feelings when they come up of that emotion, that emotional attachment. What we do get to do is kind of just take them apart and realize, all right, this is what the beer gave me. It wasn't great. This is what I could give me. And this was part of it. And just because we remember them together doesn't mean they're so inextricably intertwined all the time.
Yeah, that's a good analysis. And plus, what you give yourself, you don't end up with a hangover either. So
right. That's the best gift of all, right?
Yeah.
I never regret. You always regret waking up with a hangover and the shame, but I've never regretted waking up sober.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Most definitely.
Nice one, Patrick.
That was a good one.
Okay. Let's get ready to wrap it up. I want to real quick thank everybody so much. Thank you for all the subscribers and all the support. If you're getting anything out of this,
thank you.
Yeah, hold on. Let's talk about a self-esteem issue. Earlier today, we were at 110 subscribers. And then I looked before the show, we were at 108. 2 people. What the fuck did I do? What did I do?
Oh, John, you made it. You've made it when you get haters. So
yeah,
it's all good.
It's all good.
For sure. Okay.
Players only love you when you're playing.
That's right.
Yep.
This has been good. I'm glad we did a Sober Mind Rewind Redemption. Patrick, you didn't want any part of that one we did.
The one we did before was horrible.
I think we're starting to really get our flow. Man, we've been getting crazy positive feedback on the podcast. There was like 4 reviews, and it's rated a solid 5 stars with a bunch of great comments in there. And I get a ton of good feedback on this stuff, and I go and try to answer everybody's comments when I can. Someone asked the other day, why did I subscribed? Why did I not pop up on the stream? Like I think you guys saw. Thank you, Judi Turnbull, and a couple others. It's because if you don't have your privacy settings in your YouTube account to show your name when you subscribe, then it's not gonna show up. So go fix that if you want. Saturday confirmed for the Sober Mind Saturday stream. Kelly will be here.
Yay.
Doing Kelly's Tale. That's going to be, I'm really, really excited about that. Judy's going to be on the Judi cam in the Zen room. Kelly will be in here. Patrick will be on the Patrick cam. And we're going to get it going. just be forewarned, everybody. I don't think that's going to be a 1 hour show. Patrick, that thing might creep into a good 2 hours once we get started. Kelly's a talker.
She's good, but she's got good information, so it's good.
I'll give everyone sort of an hors d'oeuvre about Kelly. Here, if someone says, how would you describe Kelly, John? I would say, if you believe in reincarnation, Kelly was the queen of all hippies in 1965. You would say, why not in the 70s? I'll say, because she was the queen. She started the hippie movement. Is that a fair assessment?
A reincarnation of Janis Joplin.
Yeah.
Minus the singing.
Yeah. Oh,
well,
she can sing way
too,
better.
Yeah.
Kelly can sing way better. All right, Patrick, Judi and I wanted to reciprocate. We ended when I was getting a fever last Saturday, and I was editing the show to upload it to the for the podcast, and you said, I love you guys.
We love you too.
I just want to say we love you too, man. Thank you for being a part of the show. Thanks for being on this journey with us.
With that, all the way around. You guys have been putting in serious work. I'm just along for the ride.
It's good stuff. All right, that's it. Let's wrap it up, babe.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Be kind to yourselves.
Be kind to yourselves. Reach out if you need to.
Yep. Get some help. There's Al-Anon out there. There's the 988. There's you got that thing in your pocket. Just type in sobriety, anxiety, depression. There's a wealth of stuff. Come hang out here. There was on some of my shorts that I uploaded, I got some comments. There was a guy that was struggling with drinking. He said, man, I saw this short that you uploaded, and I'm going to give it a shot today. I'm going to try to quit drinking. So what you said earlier resonates, Patrick.
Just put it out in the universe, man.
Yeah.
Yep. Just put it out there.
So help is out there, folks, if you want or need it. And in the meantime, we're going to sign off. We'll see you guys on Saturday. Love you all. Thanks for the support. Bye.
Bye.